Our guide assesses the cave. Every day the glacier is different. This cave didn't exist the day before, so we'll be the first people ever to climb through it. He secures a rope and climbs through one more time to make sure it's safe, and then in we go. I'm climbing through a crystal clear, icy blue hole in the middle of the Franz Josef Glacier. This is amazing. Plus, I took a helicopter to land on top of this glacier. Amazing! I cannot believe I'm on top of the world, actually on the bottom of the world, in an otherworldly blue and white world, in crampons no less, and I'm hiking along a block of ice over 7,000 years old in the southern Alps of New Zealand. I'm not in Kansas anymore. Kia ora. Everyone I know wants to go to New Zealand, especially those who've already been there. Kiwis, as they call themselves, after the flightless bird, not the fruit, are the most fun-loving, well-balanced, good-natured people I've ever met. Perhaps it's the amazing playground of mountains, volcanoes, rivers, beaches, and rainforests that they call home that makes them so chill and happy. New Zealand is an adventure lover's paradise. I cannot believe all the really, really cool things I was able to do. And I can't wait to share them with you. So let's get started. Welcome to the Active Travel Adventures podcast. I'm your host, Kit Parks, and today we have got an amazing adventure for you. In fact, it's so amazing, I'm going to have to break this up into at least a couple parts because I was in New Zealand for an entire month, and I couldn't possibly cram everything that you need to know into one episode. If you're new to the show, on the Active Travel Adventures podcast, I consider it my mission to inspire and empower you to lead a bigger life through adventure travel, and I do it by showcasing some amazing destinations in the hopes of inspiring you to go out and try them yourselves. If you listen to this show today and do not put New Zealand on your bucket list, I will be shocked. When people think about New Zealand, they worry about the long flight. Me, I just frame it as an extended time where no one could bug me and I could treat myself to novels instead of nonfiction, watch movies, or catch up on my sleep. Call me odd, but I love the transit part. It helps that I'm 5'6", so I fit in all the seats, no matter how small. You lose a day when you get there, but you get it back when you return. There's a 16-hour time difference for me. I find I don't have a problem flying westbound. I get there, I'm excited, you usually land in the morning, and you set out, and then by the end of the day, you crash, and the next morning, you're pretty much in the normal time zone for New Zealand. I find coming home, that's where I have the problem, and I've learned to make myself stay awake until at least 8 p.m. It's really, really difficult, but if you do that, you'll find yourself a lot better off on the back end. For me, that's the hardest part of the whole trip. When I arrive, I have a week before I join my Active Adventures group in Christchurch. I decide to head to the adventure capital of Queenstown to explore for the entire week. Because of my tour, we have one free day there, and I've just heard so many great things about it, I decide I'm going to concentrate there. However, a late spring snowstorm hits when I land in Auckland. It's mid-November, and remember, they're in the southern hemisphere, so their seasons are switched from those of us in the northern hemisphere. So my flight from Auckland to Queenstown is canceled. I end up hunkering down at a nearby hotel. This is a good reason to buy travel insurance. It covers the delays, and I'm not going to be getting any refund on my Queenstown Airbnb. By lunchtime the next day, I'm on my way. I take a shared ride into town directly to my Airbnb, which I'm happy to see exceeds my expectations. The view is astonishing. The mountainside is steep, so nearly every house has an unencumbered view of the lightning bolt-shaped Lake Wakatipu, New Zealand's third largest lake by area and its longest. It's a finger lake carved from glaciers, like the hand of God has ripped out the land with his fingers and then filled it with water. Lake Wakatipu is an uncommon tidal lake. Actually, more correctly, you call it an unusually large seiche. May not be pronouncing that right. It's S-E-I-C-H-E, which is called a standing wave. This causes the water in the lake to rise and fall about 10 centimeters every 25 minutes or so. There's a Maori legend that links this phenomenon to the heartbeat of a huge monster named Mateo, who's said to be slumbering at the bottom of the lake, and it's his heartbeat that goes up and down as the water rises and falls. I'm going to come to learn a lot about the Maori people and their customs and wisdom during this adventure. After dropping off my bag, I walk the 2 miles back to town where I learn they have a great and inexpensive bus system that I can use for when I don't feel like walking. A friendly neighborhood local tells me about a pretty trail that follows the road, but it lies hidden, tucked into the woods. and this becomes my personal freeway for the rest of the visit. I'm going to run out of superlatives when it comes to the natural beauty of New Zealand. It is unbelievable. Queenstown is a flat town built around Queenstown Bay, and it's surrounded by snow-capped mountains and facing the beautiful Lake Wakatipu. It's particularly pretty after yesterday's snow. Up above, you can see Ben Lomond, the tallest mountain in the area, and Queenstown Hill. Both have great trails to get a nice panoramic view. If you're not up to hiking, you can take the funicular up high and even grab a drink or a meal. My biggest problem is deciding what to do. Queenstown offers every, and I mean every, EVERY, every adventure. Shoot, they even invented bungee jumping here. I may not be an adrenaline junkie, but if you are, Queenstown's your place. The kinds of adventures I lean towards is doing something where I earn my view, whether it's trekking up a mountain, biking through a forest, or paddling down a river. First up, a tour of Wakatipu by boat. On the ride, I learned the history of the area and we get up close and personal with the Remarkables. This is a rugged mountain range that you would think is named such just due to its remarkable beauty, but it turns out it's because it's one of the two directly north to south mountain ranges. I haven't had enough of the water, so up next, a tour of the Dart River by jet boat. We take a 30-mile, 46-kilometer bus ride to Glenorchy, considered one of the world's top 10 scenic drives. Lord of the Rings and Hobbit fans are going to recognize the backdrop. Jet boats are super fast and skim the surface and are agile. They were invented here in New Zealand. When the driver points his finger in the air and twirls it around, you better brace yourself. You're about to do a 360. Fun, fun, fun. He also has fun trying to make you think you're about to hit the shoreline or go crashing into a rock, and then he veers out right at the last minute and with a big splash and hurrah. I do believe that he has the most fun job out there. So we're whizzing up the Dart River on the left side of Mount Alfred, and then we get out to hike and stretch our legs. It's here I learn about the paradise ducks. Like many, paradise ducks mate for life. In fact, when the female dies, the male will stand next to her until he too dies from starvation. Now that's devotion. Sadly, if the male dies first, the female glances at him, perhaps giving him a peck on the bill, and says, "Sayonara, baby." What a fantastic day. In fact, I'm going to find myself saying this every day for the next month. In between hikes and general exploration, I discover there's a rafting adventure on the Kawarara River. I'm assured that we'll be in wetsuits so I won't get cold. I hate the cold. But with a little bit of uncertainty, at a glance at the brochure, it does look like fun. I end up booking the trip. The Kawarara River, I'm probably saying that wrong, sorry, Kawarau, the Kawarara River, is a mild Class 2 to Class 3 river. And while I'm getting geared up, the receptionist says that there's a couple of spots open on the jet boat if somebody wants, for a discounted rate. So I had the opportunity to take a jet boat to our put-in place instead of taking the bus. And after the fun I had the day before on the jet boat, I jump at the chance. As we paddle along the Kawarara River, we see a timid man standing on the bridge, deciding whether to leap off. Jump, jump, jump! No, not suicide. He's bungee jumping. In fact, it was on this ridge that the first crazy person ever tried bungee jumping. So our little friend in the bridge jumps, he smiles, and we paddle on. When we got to some calm water, our guide, whom by now I trusted to seem very competent, said we could get out and swim. What? This water is freezing cold. But one thing I've learned is to always try to say yes to anything new, especially if it makes me twitch a little bit. Those usually end up being the most fun experiences, and I get great satisfaction from them. So, your cold-averse host leaned backwards off the raft and then plunged into the frigid water. Hurrah! Wetsuits really do work. I couldn't believe I wasn't freezing. So after swimming a little bit, I was hoisted back into the raft with a big smile on my face. In a wetsuit, the water gets in the suit and the booties, and so your body's heating the water, keeping you warm. Sweet. Or as they say down here, sweet as one of their most common expressions. Back in the raft, we're ready for the grand finale. New Zealand's longest commercially rafted rapid is a whopping 400 meters. What fun! We were full of tired grins on our bus ride back to Queenstown. It was hard choosing a restaurant in Queenstown. The variety is endless, and there's lots of choices both on the waterfront and on the little side streets behind this charming harbor. I will say that one hamburger joint that I'm not going to name, but you're probably going to recognize by the long line outside the door, the owner is a marketing genius. I joke that they probably hired actors to line up on opening day, and the lines have been there since, with tourists waiting in line so they can Instagram their selfie with them eating this burger. I asked several locals, and they told me it was not the best burger in town. I did not eat one. Before long, it's time to fly up to Christchurch, where I'm going to meet my active adventures guides and fellow adventurers. In Christchurch, you're going to see the resilience of the Kiwis everywhere, plus the massive rebuilding effort. If you have time, visit the Quake City Museum. I found it fascinating, and they did a remarkable job explaining not just about earthquakes in general, but in particular about the 2011 one. Watching a film from one of the street corner videos that had captured the quake at the time still sticks in my mind. I also really enjoyed the Canterbury Museum, and I learned a little bit about New Zealand's cultural and natural history. And anytime I need a laugh, I can just look at this video I took of one of the videos they had of some of the early Antarctica explorers with their dogs. And I think these were rescue dogs. And they would put parachutes on these dogs and then just push them out of the planes. And I had to laugh and wonder, what on earth were those dogs thinking the first time they were pushed out in that plane in a parachute and landing on ice? It's hysterical. I'll post the video on the website, activetraveladventure.com/NZ for New Zealand. And while I didn't have time to visit the International Antarctic Center, I heard some great things about it, and I'm going to definitely do it if I get out to New Zealand another time. And it's nice. It's right next to the airport, so you could drop your bags off and head over there unencumbered with all your junk while you're waiting for your plane. After a good night's sleep, followed by a hearty breakfast in a comfortable historic inn, I waited outside to meet my group. There were some adventurous-looking people also standing out there, and I asked if they were with Active Adventures. I would be spending the next 2 weeks with these folks, and I could tell immediately that they were warm, fun-loving, and inquisitive people. Also waiting was Leanna and MJ, our guides, our van, and Kermit, named after Kermit the Frog, a green trailer that would hold all of our gear. Let the adventure begin. Outside of a couple of local encounters with some fellow hikers and staff at the businesses I used, this was my first long Kiwi encounter. I was taken with their infectious good spirits, laughter, and delighted with each new phrase I learned. Toasty is a grilled sandwich. Chili bin is a cooler. The road signs I found amusing as well. Roads can get frosty when wet. Give way. And conversation is often dappled with the word wee, meaning small. She's a wee child. It's a wee tree. It's a wee hike. We have a beautiful drive up to the Kaikoura Peninsula. The cliff was uplifted and the landscape forever changed during the Kaikoura earthquake in 2017. A viral video shot after the quake of 3 famously stranded cows perched atop a grassy knoll where the land surrounding them collapsed, like being on top of a toadstool. Happily, they were rescued, and I'll post a clip taken by the helicopter. It's indeed amazing. The earthquake literally cut off Kaikoura from the south as the main road disappeared. The Kiwis showed not only their strength and resilience, but their ability to solve problems of staggering magnitude, pun intended. Sometimes the helicopters would purposely dump water on the mountainside to force the eventual slide, and then they would truck the soil and rock away so they could get on with the rebuild. This quake has been called the most complex ever studied. It's remarkable that only 2 people were killed in the 7.8 magnitude quake, New Zealand's second worst since James Cook arrived in the 1700s. After being cut off from the main commerce in the south, the Kiwis figured out workarounds, often with helicopters, to ensure that the folks got the food and health care and other necessities that they needed until the road could be rebuilt. For a country of less than 5 million, this was a humongous undertaking of manpower and resources. We stopped for a picnic lunch at Gore Bay, where we watched the waves crash against the cliffs and look out for the fur seals. On the way to the fur colony, we see an oddly pink house on a white foundation. Fife House. Fife House is all that's left of the once busy Waiapuka whaling station. It has withstood all that Mother Nature can lash out at it since 1844. The pink color is a wash made from the blood of a whale, and the foundation is its vertebrae. Our breathtaking hike takes us up to the ridge on this moody day. It's fitting weather for such a rugged coastline. The landscape along this coastline is so rough that it only appears to be every once in a while that the land is flat enough to contain a village. To me, the land looks like a mashup between, say, Scotland and Hawaii. For dinner, we're treated to a delicious kiwi barbecue. A Barbie, made by MJ and Leanna. I can tell that we're going to be in for some great meals if this is any indication. It's also a great time to get to know some of my adventure mates. Most are couples, but I'm not the only one traveling solo. Our ages range from around mid-30s up into the 70s. Everybody's in pretty good shape, and most have done some kind of adventure travel in the past. We head into Marlborough wine country, which is world-renowned for its Sauvignon Blanc. En route, we pass a whole bunch of vineyards. I saw one they're just about to build, and there were thousands upon thousands of posts laid out neatly, ready to be sunk into the soil so they could start a new vineyard. It's interesting. At the end of each row in the vineyard, there's a rose bush. These flowers act like a canary in a coal mine. Trouble is going to hit the roses before it hits the grapevines, whether it's a fungus, another disease, or a pest. And what I think are small windmills are actually fans to help keep frosts away. Sometimes they even use the blades of a helicopter to disturb the air during frosts. We stop in the town of Blenheim. It's our last chance to pick up anything we need for the next few days, including alcohol. I decide, since I'm going to be hiking, I don't want to carry the weight. But before we go into the wild, we first stop at Forest Vineyards for a wine tasting at 11 o'clock in the morning. Looks like I'll be carrying my alcohol in my belly instead. The setting is absolutely lovely, and it would be great just to bring a book and read outside. Now our group is splitting up. We have a choice for the next 3 days that we have to make ahead of time to either hike the gorgeous Nelson Lakes, bike Queen Charlotte, or kayak in Marlborough. Our group splits into two. We have a hiking and a kayaking group, and regular listeners know that I'm going to choose the hike. Nobody chose to do the mountain biking. Our hiking group arrives in St. Arnaud and Nelson's Lake National Park. Before we set out, and while MJ and Leanna are getting things ready, we walk over to the dock under which the water is filled with long-fin eels, dozens of them. These are New Zealand's only freshwater eels, and at the end of their life, they migrate by climbing back up the rivers to the Pacific Ocean for breeding, and they are a staple food of the Maori diet. The hike begins fairly level on a path under a beach canopy paralleling Lake Rotoiti. This beautiful forest is covered in moss as well, which helps clean the waters. And the acidic leaves of the beach mean there's little competition, so here the beech tree is queen. I'm impressed with our guides' knowledge of the flora and fauna, and they don't seem to be bothered by my incessant questions. I used to own a plant nursery and I'm a plant nut, and happily they love plants just as much as I do. As we're walking along, we see these little glistening droplets along the sides of the beech bark, and MJ explains to us that it's honeydew, takes her finger and takes a swab of it and puts it in her mouth, so we all do the same. It's nice and sweet, and it's a favorite of the bees. And in fact, I learned also from MJ that the European bees that were imported are attracted to blue, so keep that in mind if you happen to be allergic to bees, but also that the dreaded sandflies are attracted to black, so it's best not to wear black in certain parts of New Zealand because you don't want to be attracting them. But now let's get back to this honeydew. So we're eating, it's pretty sweet, and we're like, what is it? And it turns out that we were eating aphid poo. So the aphids are attracted to the sap in the beech bark because that gives them a nice protein that they need for their diet, but then they excrete this honeydew, which then becomes part of the food chain for the bees. All in all, it's kind of cool. And the forest, because it is a almost complete beech forest, is covered when the light hits it with this glistening dew. It's kind of cool. It kind of reminded me of the aphids when I had the plant nursery. Sometimes the ants would actually farm or harvest aphids in order to get that same kind of a honeydew, just not as pretty as what they have in New Zealand. On our hike, we're carrying our sleeping bag, any other clothes that we might need, in our toiletries, our water, and a portion of the food. Leanna and MJ are carrying the vast majority of the goods, and their packs seem to weigh like 70 pounds, and it's no wonder. For the meals, they're using full-size Dutch ovens and frying pans to feed our group. Plus, they're carrying the majority of the food. MJ serves us a hot cuppa when we arrive at Lakehead Hut for the night. And it's at this hut that I met John, who I interviewed about Banff National Park in Canada in episode 43. I'll put a link in the show notes and on the website. Run by DOC, the Department of Conservation, this hut is one of 900 or so, and it's a clean, basic shelter with a working kitchen and communal bunk beds. It has a big dining table and a latrine outside. We share the hut with a few others for the night and the kitchen with some kids that are in a large school group that are camping outside. New Zealand encourages their children to get outside both to learn about nature and conservation, but also to learn about the joy of just spending time in the wild. This won't be the last time I see school groups doing fun outdoor adventures with their teachers. When I was a kid, we just went to Coney Island. When New Zealanders go on extended hikes like what we're doing, it's called tramping. Cue Frank Sinatra. I cannot wait to tell Mom that her daughter is a tramp. Actually, I better not. I don't think that's going to translate very well. After dinner, Leanna challenges us to a Tim Tam no-hand slam. What? What is this, you might ask? We did too, and Leanna gave us a demonstration. In fact, she did a double Tim Tam no-hand slam, and I caught that on film, and I'll post that also on the website. The Tim Tams are a cookie, and so to do the no-hand slam, you bite on the cookie, and then without using your hands, you tip up your hot chocolate bug, and you swig it all down with the cookie, and it's quite a skill, but a tasty one at that. In the morning after brekkie, we load up our packs. MJ has given us some scroggin, or trail mix. Up ahead, Leanna takes us on a detour to Whiskey Falls. One of my favorite pictures is of my future roommate, Inika, sitting and looking at this beautiful waterfall, which of course I'll post. Today's destination is to the Bushline Hut, but first we have to cross a river. I already knew that when you cross a river, you unclip your backpack in case you fall in, because you don't want the pack to pull you under if it gets caught on something. The Traverse River is going to come up to around our knees, so Leanna taught us how to safely cross it in a group. We hugged each other's waist and then walked at a slant to the current until we were safely on the other side, where we then followed the river before heading up to Hookery Stream towards the ridgeline. Our elevation gain was about 1,000 meters, but it was worth it. And you know I'm always happy to exert energy in order to get that view. And what a view when we finally made it to the Angelus Hut. We are on top of the world looking down on the lake. And the lake is mirror smooth today. So much so that it makes our eyes play tricks on us that didn't quite know how to focus. And it was really almost disturbing and unsettling to my brain. It didn't know how to make out this reflection, this mirror image. And the view was just striking. And I got one of my other favorite photos, which of course I'll post that as well. We're hiking the Angelus Circuit, and it's considered by many Kiwis preferable to some of the more crowded and well-known trails that tourists go on. And actually we tramped along part of the Te Araroa. This is New Zealand's long-distance trail that runs north to south for about 3,000 kilometers, and we were on a section where they ran together. We all crashed after a hard day's hike. And in the morning, before heading back to civilization, we were hiking along the barren Robert Ridge, again with dramatic views, this time of the Tasman Bay and the mountainous Kahurangi National Park in the distance. My photos just don't do it justice. And now it's time for our long hike downhill. MJ is entertaining us with riddles, and I won't drive you nuts the way she did with all of her perplexing puzzles. Eventually, we make it to the shores of Lake Rotoiti, where we meet up with the kayakers. I know I'm prejudiced, but I do believe that we hikers made the right choice. And I wonder how Active Adventures is going to top this. In the afternoon, we head across the Southern Alps to the west coast, a dramatic and rugged coastline stretching 600 kilometers, about 400 miles, with a population of only 40,000 people. We pass abandoned gold mine areas and learn about the 5 F's of New Zealand: farming, forestry, football, foreigners, and fishing. When we hit the west coast, the beech trees are now giving way to tree ferns, and I feel like I've changed country somehow. We're also starting to see a lot of the koa plant, which I've become very fond of. This spiky plant has a beautiful crested red flower that attracts the bellbirds. It kind of reminds me of a bird of paradise, but it's spikier. And from the leaves, you can make some flax, ropes, and they do weavings and make things like bags and such. So it's a very versatile plant. And we're also starting to see the Neko palms, New Zealand's southernmost, and remember south equals cold here, so it's New Zealand's southernmost native palm. You can tell the age of a Neko by counting the rings up its trunk. We end the day in the seaside village of Punakaki, catching up with the kayakers over the ever-popular fish and chips at the local pub. In the morning, We eat a hearty pancake breakfast, and then we hike the super green and lush inland pack trail through a temperate rainforest and some limestone canyons. We are following in the footsteps of gold miners who established this trail over a century ago. And then it's more pancakes, but not of the breakfast kind. These pancakes are made of limestone rocks eroded by the blasting of the Tasman Sea, which has created these stacked pancake rock formations that you've just got to see to believe. Just picture a breakfast stack, but of different sized pancakes making a column. It's just really, really cool. And sometimes there's an eroded blowhole that bursts with the sea spray at high tide when the waves come in. There's a nice boardwalk that you can safely check out all this remarkable coastline. I have never seen anything like that. It's just amazing. It almost doesn't even look real. Leanna is waiting with Kermit to pick us up after Pancake Rock. And in the middle of the road is a panicky, distraught woman. You can get around New Zealand by bus, and they'll go to a lot of the popular tourist places, let you get off for a little bit, you go see the sign, and get back on the bus. So anyway, this woman was supposed to be back at a certain time, and she was a couple minutes late, and the bus left her, but it still had her suitcase. Fortunately, Leanna's never going to do that to us, so she and Kermit were waiting for us, even though we were probably a little bit late coming back from Pancake Rock. And the lady, I imagine, can hitch a ride to catch up to the bus. Hitchhiking is actually quite common in New Zealand and considered safe, almost even encouraged. Our drive continues along the scenic coastline, and we get out to stretch our legs and explore the town of Harakeke. This is where the jade green stone, called Punamu by the local Maori tribe artists, who often live and work in this area. In 1997, this particular Maori tribe was given back the exclusive rights to all ownership of the naturally occurring Punamu. And I apologize to all the Maori and Kiwi people for my horrible pronunciation and butchering of the language. Anyway, the Punamu, which they register and they certify before sale. As you walk along town, you can see the artists working in the galleries, and they have a nice museum that explains more about this jade and how it's the jade, its history, and how people maneuver it, usually just with a whetstone. We saw them work with a little whetstone and making these nice little intricate ornamentations that people often wear as a necklace. And according to Leanna, the tradition is for a loved one to give you your necklace. It's not something that you buy for yourself. And each design has a special meaning, so you're saying something with the chosen design that you give your loved one. Harakeke is known not just for the Punamu, but also for the Wild Foods Festival. Surely you want to try out the wasp larva ice cream or the sheep testicles, also known as mountain meatballs. So make sure you're timing your trip to coincide with the festival. And speaking of mountain meatballs or testicles, they cook their poached eggs in a way that I thought was kind of unique. They'll take a copper pan and put a little vinegar in it and then pour the cracked egg into it and then slide that into the simmering water, and it rolls up into a ball that truly does look like a little white testicle. So it tastes the same, but it sure looks a little bit different than what I'm used to back here at home. We have a few hours to explore Harakeke, and I also hear I'm getting a roommate now, Rachel from the Philippines. She had actually been on the North Island visiting a friend, and because Active knew we'd be in Harakeke for a while, she was able to catch up with us in order to join us for the back end of our tour. One thing I like about Active is you can travel solo without paying a single supplement. They try to pair you a same-sex roommate, so in this case I got Rachel, but if they can't, no problem. They don't hit me up with a single supplement fee. Excuse me, actually more like a fine sometimes. So I like that you're not required to cough up money for a solo room. It makes traveling solo a lot more affordable. And for the 3 trips I'm taking this fall with a different company, if you add up what I'm paying for the single supplements, that actually would have bought another tour. I also learned that several of my travel mates are going to be catching up with the back end of a North Island tour at the end of our current tour. And I check the itinerary and I look at my own schedule, and I can join them if they can squeeze me in on the tour. A quick call to Active's office, and thanks to Mr. MasterCard, I'm now joining the North Island tour with them as well. Who knows if I'll ever make it back to New Zealand? My Auckland plans are going to have to wait. So far, this tour has been epic, and I don't want it to end. The kinds of things we're doing would be virtually impossible for me to coordinate logistically on my own, or they'd be prohibitively expensive to do so. And I get the knowledge of Leanna and MJ to boot. I've heard that New Zealand's diverse landscape is like Australia's, but in a more manageable package. In my 1 month here, I'm able to see quite a bit of a nice slice of the entire country. That same time in Australia just allowed me 4 towns. Today we start the day in a temperate rainforest, but end the day at Franz Josef in glacier country. Remarkable. Not just that, but standing in the rainforest, I can actually see the Southern Alps. It's head spinning, and each view is more beautiful than the last, yet completely different. We stop at a little town called Ross, where the largest gold nugget was found. It was the size of a fist, and they nicknamed it Roddy. Each week by raffle, the townspeople would see who would host Roddy for the upcoming week. Some weeks Roddy would end up as a doorstop, maybe a bookend, and it was quite fun. When George was to be coronated, the town gifted Roddy to the future King George and was saddened to find that Roddy had been melted into a tea set. And I'm guessing Roddy much preferred being a doorstop. We're based at Franz Josef for a couple of days. Active Adventures has brought so many folks to see the glaciers that when the inn was remodeling, they co-designed a special building to house active guides with a community room that we could all use. It was like having our own super large and cozy living room. Once again, MJ whips up a feast. In the morning, we head to Okarito. In Maori, this means the place of the rat, a little-known beach community on the coast. Okarito is filled with some of New Zealand's remaining wetlands. There's only about 10% left. These wetlands attract a bird called the godwit, which migrate here from Alaska, flying non-stop for 9 to 10 days. Here I put on a wetsuit again. This is becoming a pattern for somebody who doesn't like the cold. The temperature was pleasant enough, but the wetsuit is just in case I tip over. We jump into our sea kayaks and paddle estuaries below snow-capped peaks. Otherworldly does not capture it. Okarito boasts one other unique trait. The Maori people have 72 stops in the country where they can camp for 200 days a year. Okarito is one of them, as it's a traditional stop along their historical routes. This area gets 250 inches of rain each year. No wonder it's so lush down below, and so snow-covered up high. I'm visiting during a mast year, M-A-S-T. Every 2 to 7 years, when the summer temperatures go hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold, the plants drop their seeds all at once. This means I get to see some great flowering, some of the best. It sounds cool, right? However, all this food means an explosion of the mammal community, and this would include stoats, which is a little mink-like creature, possums, and rats, all of whom eat the flightless birds endemic to New Zealand, like the kiwi bird. The only native land mammal in New Zealand are bats. Everything else has been introduced, and they're running amok, and critically endangering the darling kiwi and other native creatures. There's something called Operation Nest Egg. And here they remove the kiwi eggs and incubate them. Once they reach a certain size, they are moved to a mammal-free, protected crèche to get a little bit bigger and stronger before being released back into the wild. Giving them this 1-year holiday from predators will give them a 60 to 70% chance of making it to maturity versus the current 5%. In the past 25 years, kiwi population has grown from 160 to 550. They also make sure that there's no inbreeding. And of course, all this is very expensive. It costs about $25,000 per bird. I'm going to put a link in the show notes if you want to help. I'm super excited about today. I'm hiking on a glacier. Not only that, I'm taking my first helicopter ride to get there. This is an optional excursion, but I was reading through the reviews that this is a highlight, so I pushed the buy button. There are 140 glaciers working their way down the Southern Alps. In glacier country, the 2 most popular are the frozen rivers that make the Franz Josef and Fox glaciers. And these work their way down to the temperate rainforest to about 250 meters or about 800 feet above sea level. The Franz Josef Glacier is directly on top of the fault line and has been a most regular quake zone, erupting about every 290 years. However, the last time was in 1717, so it's a bit overdue. If today's the day and it's my day to go, what a grand finale. I chose the heli hike, but if I hadn't, I could be hiking Alex Knob or Roberts Point, weather permitting, to get some great views of the ice. But, have I mentioned, I'm hiking on a glacier. Everything, of course, is weather dependent. The winds have to be just right to go up in a helicopter. And yay, I'm going. We walked to the helipad after getting our safety instructions. And while I'm sure I paid attention throughout, the one instruction I still remember after 6 months is that when you enter and exit the helicopter, keep your head and your hands down. Apparently, some woman a while back asked her friend to get out first and then take her picture as she exited. She jumped up in the air and lifted her now handless arms into the sky. Those blades are invisible and sharp, so keep your head down and you'll be fine. We all, of course, got out unscathed and thrilled. Being on a helicopter is loud, and so they give you some earmuffs, but you lift off like a feather. I couldn't believe how floaty it was. The views were incredible, and the flight was over way too soon. The glacier is always changing, and so the glacier guides go up early, and they often carve out a new helipad like they did for us today. The glacier guide's job is to assess the ever-changing glacier and then choose a route to explore. We put on crampons. Crampons are like sandals that you snap over your boots that have these jagged metal spikes in them to help to grip the ice so you don't slip. So we put on crampons. Down below, before we got in the helicopter, we were given some really warm waterproof thermal jackets that were brand new, and they even glued the pocket shut to make sure it stayed waterproof. That, and they gave us some waterproof pants, wool socks, some thermal waterproof boots over which we put the crampons once we got onto the ice, and an emergency bag. Of course, I had my own hat and gloves, and I was perfectly comfortable. And I did ask the guide, if there is an emergency, little stores of food cached away up there, and you've got some emergency gears in your bag. And I think if you get stuck more than 5 days, you end up hiking down, but usually they can get you out of there in a day or two. It's a very rare occurrence, but I like that they did have a backup plan in case the weather changed and the helicopters couldn't get up. They got you up there, but then if the weather changed, they couldn't get you back down. I like that they had a solution for that. As we hike, our guide occasionally carves out some steps for us, and he teaches us proper crampon technique. As you walk, you distinctly lift your foot up and down. You don't drag them where you might be able to snag a little jagged piece of ice or something. It's counterintuitive, too, that you also, when you're going downhill, you walk with your feet pointed straight ahead. Not like if, say, we're hiking down a really steep hill, we might go down with our feet sideways, kind of leaning into the hill. You don't do that on ice hill. Because if your crampon gets stuck on the ice and it doesn't come out the way you expect it to, you could twist your ankle. So even though you feel a little twitchy the first few times you do it, after a while you see that, hey, this does really work. And I feel comfortable and stable walking face forward, feet forward, straight downhill on an ice hill. Super cool. Those metal grippers really do keep you in control. Oh, aren't we lucky? There's an ice cave up ahead. Our guide goes up ahead to assess the cave. Every day the glacier is different. This cave didn't even exist the day before, so we're going to be the very first people on the planet to climb through it. He secures a rope and climbs through one more time to make sure it's safe for us, and then in we go. I'm climbing through this crystal clear, icy blue hole in the middle of the Franz Josef Glacier. This is amazing. Plus, I took a helicopter to land on top of this glacier. Amazing! I cannot believe I'm on top of the world, in an otherworldly blue and white world, in crampons no less, and I'm hiking along a block of ice over 7,000 years old in the southern Alps of New Zealand. I'm definitely not in Kansas anymore. No, Dorothy, I am 1,300 meters or 4,265 feet above sea level on the Franz Josef Glacier, and I cannot believe it. It seems like every day has been the highlight, but truly, this is the highlight. All week, Manny, who is normally a shy guy, has said repeatedly how this trip has so far exceeded all of his expectations. When we returned to town, we heli hikers decided to enjoy a craft beer while waiting for the day hikers of the group to join us and share stories of our adventures. That night, we enjoyed a traditional Kiwi roast dinner, and after a delicious lamb shank, we eagerly went out to explore some more. I also want to make a note of something. There was another tour group seated near us at dinner, and they were having a quote-unquote fluorescent night, where everybody planned to get drunk and were dressed in fluorescent clothing and hair. No doubt hilarity ensued. I mention this as a way to remind you to check out the personality of any tour company that you choose, and to make sure that they're the right fit for you. Shoot me now if I were in that fluorescent group. I would just be Miss Frump and miserable. Companies have personalities just as people do, so book accordingly. Leanna offered to show us some glowworms that night. Glowworms are these teeny little worms that light up in search of mates. She knew just where to go for us to see these tiny delights. Little did I know that I'd soon get to see millions of glowworms. Let's see. So far I've boated, paddled, hiked, heli-hiked, and kayaked. This trip has been epic. So what's missing on my adventure? Of course, biking. But that we're going to save until next time. Like I said, it's an injustice to try to cover our whole country in a single episode. So today we're in the South Island, and when I come back in 2 weeks, we're going to do part 2 of the South Island because I've really barely just scratched the surface. And after that, we're going to do the North Island on a 3rd episode. There are still a ton of adventurous places to explore in New Zealand, and even in 3 parts, I hope I can do justice to this Hall of Famer country. If you like the Active Travel Adventures podcast and want to support the program, please share this episode with your friends. Share it on Facebook, share it on Instagram, email, and also use my links on the website at activetraveladventures.com. This is a free, no-cost way to show your support and to help keep this program going and ad-free. What I love about travel, and in particular adventure travel, is you get to live it 3 times. First with the anticipation and the excitement before you go, then when you're actually doing the adventure, and then like today when I got to relive my adventure all over again and will be able to do so for years and decades hopefully to come. I hope you've enjoyed today. I really appreciate you listening, and I hope you're getting as much out of my New Zealand adventure as I did. I loved it, and I'm looking forward to seeing you back here in 2 weeks. Again, thanks for listening. I'll see you then. Until then, this is Kit Parks. Adventure on.